In this episode, I get to sit down with Will Schiller. He's a longtime friend and mentor of mine. Will has shaped the way I run my business by teaching me the power of leading from my values instead of my needs. This conversation is for any coach or business owner who's looking to redefine what success means to them so that they too can build the kind of business that feels like freedom instead of one that just looks impressive. What you'll learn is how an authentic content strategy allows for genuine conversations, why putting constraints on the growth of your business and prioritizing personal well-being can lead to a more fulfilling life, and how creating from truth and aligning your actions with your core values is essential for long-term success and fulfillment. This is so important because, as you know, personal development is crucial for building a successful business. And trust is the currency of business. And authenticity is the key to building trust. All right. Yeah. So the thing I love about this is the podcast, the idea of it, it's less about it being some successful podcast and more about this is the, quite frankly, the content strategy that feels the most authentic to me. As you know, I've had a long history of not liking social media for many reasons, but understanding the power and the importance of being able to reach, more people that are, seeking information and guidance and opportunity and just kind of true conversation. Because what I don't do well is, hold the phone and teach like this. Like I've never really, I don't know, it's just not been my style. But what I've always loved is being in authentic conversations with people that I admire and that inspire me. That's where I find that a lot of the stuff I wish people could hear comes out. So, it just clicked that, hosting a podcast and having these conversations with people like yourself was the only way for me to do it in a way that felt authentic to me versus it being some curated thing that I'm doing in hopes that people respond well and go into my funnel and do all this. Like, fuck all that. Like, I can't. Like, it's not how I want to run my business, and it's certainly not how I want to live my life. So what I found is this platform is, quite frankly, the best of all worlds, because you can record a beautiful conversation for an hour and chop it up however many ways makes sense. And, this thing gets to live, and hopefully people find some value in it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the best, two good points there. Number one, I think the best content is the content you create that you don't even mean to, right? Like you just kind of, there's just someone recording, but you're just having a candid, casual conversation. That's by far the best types of quote unquote content I think you can make. And then also with what you're doing with this in terms of having a podcast and then a YouTube, I think you said, it can live, right? Longer. Exactly what you said. Instead of just being 24 hours on Instagram or on Facebook, and then it's down the feed with your next post. This is something that can live for years, right? People, whatever this title is going to be, it can blow up in 2027. I don't know.
Literally.
So it's more of an asset, right? Which is a great move for you, man. So I'm pumped to see what this year's in store for you.
Yeah, and I find too that my own personal experience, and I've now heard this and countless times with others, is chasing the algorithms or chasing the next hot platform or doing any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it works for some if that's your thing, right? If you really enjoy posting that type of content or creating that type of content for these platforms. But if you're someone who doesn't really enjoy it or doesn't want to keep up with it, or just feels like a chore of some kind, like, this is the way that I think makes the most sense. Because like I said, this for me it's not about the podcast becoming successful. If that happens, awesome, right? But what this is for me is really the content strategy. It's authentic conversation with real people that have real valuable things to share, be it life, business, all the above. And it just gets to live and be used wherever people are paying attention, right? Because if there's a link, you can spread it. If there's video, you can chop it. If it's audio, you can, shoot it out there, or you can just transcribe this and post quotes or whatever comes through. So for me, this is kind of the Russian doll approach to content, where you get to spend 1 hour and it can be used in 1,000 different ways for whatever, in whatever ways, people find valuable.
I love it. Good way to go.
Yeah. But with all of that being said, I'm super curious. One, just how the hell are you, my friend? Like you said, it's been about a year since we've actually caught up. I would love to know just, actually, this comes from, I was just journaling before we jumped on here, and, thinking about 2024 and, which is quickly approaching, just a few days away at this point. But instead of just launching into 24, my vision for 24, I really had to sit and reflect on what 23 has been. Right. There's been some substantial changes in life, and, good, bad, all the indifferent. But with that in mind, I'd love to know what your last year, like, if you just, like, what have been your takeaways?
Oh man. That's a great question. And I have something similar planned for this weekend to sit down and ask myself these exact questions that I think you've asked yourself. But for me, it was definitely a different year, just in terms of me being a father now with our, and how old is she? I think 16-month-old daughter. And then just being a husband and running a business and everything else that goes with that. It was a different year in the sense of when we first got connected, Matt, which was 2019 or around there. And I was in growth mode in terms of business for many, many years. And I was just constantly in that mode. I didn't care what the year was. I didn't care what the month was. I was just focused on growing my company. Whereas in 2023, this past year, I had to put constraints on my business and how many hours I was allowed to work, like just for myself, how many hours I allow myself to work, or even just think about business, about making money, about getting clients, all of those different things, so that I was able to create the white space to be myself and to hear myself think, and to, for lack of a better phrase, so cliche, but pour into your own cup first, right? Mm-hmm. And then B, also be there and create space and have a good quality presence with my daughter and Morgan and just overall family, and be connected in a way that I haven't been connected ever, because I've never been a dad before. So it's all learning. But I would say, for me, those were, in terms of this past year, some of the biggest shifts that I've gone through. And it's not to go on a tangent here, but it's such an incredible thing, putting constraints on your growth like that, or whatever goals that you have. It's not necessarily a scale at all costs or grow at all costs mentality, because that's very expensive financially, energetically, just time-wise. Being more efficient, right, with your time, with your energy, with your resources. That's very much the season I was in 2023, and honestly going into 2024 even more so. I'm actually going to try and work even less, but still have the company be at a similar rate, if not better. But more and more putting those constraints on my time, my energy, so that I'm able to holistically live the life that I want to live. I've never, ever, ever, and I think this is why we got connected, Matt, I've never been that business owner, that online scale bro type guy who wants to fly into private jets and the Lamborghinis and stuff like that. Like, fuck, man, I just want to live a good life. And I just want to take my family out to a nice dinner. I want to be able to rent a fancy ass cabin in the woods with them every so often, sweet Airbnb, and have the time and resources to be able to do that, right? Like, that's pretty much my ceiling, like, minus a couple other things I'll talk to you about later. But that's my vision, man. So like building something in alignment with that and staying true to that, instead of like seeing what other people in the industry are doing and being skewed and swayed towards recency bias is something that's important. It's something I've really worked on this past year. So anyway, man, long way of me saying things are good.
No, I love and appreciate this more than you know, because, in starting more than a business, right? That name came to me for out of this very thought process, out of this conversation of,
Sure.
realizing that I became so exhausted by the need or the desire to appear impressive, right? And all the
Yeah.
vanity metrics and all these things that we kind of get caught up to, and for me, it really stemmed from a place of insecurity and a place of kind of imposter syndrome, where I felt like, oh, if I had the numbers, or if I did this, I did that, then I would be taken seriously, then I would be respected, or more importantly, then I would be enough, right? And what I kept finding is anytime I achieved or got close, or I mean even surpassed in some cases, some of those ideas that I had, those numbers that I thought were the thing, I found that it was a false summit, right? And I'm not just saying that philosophically, like literally, I got there. I was like, this is like, this feels awful, as much as it was exciting, right? But with the expectation that it was going to fulfill something that was external, or actually fulfill something internal via the external. I just felt it was like a swing and a miss, right? It was exhausting. And so hearing you describe that vision of being able, right? Because that's what I hear what you talk about is like, it's not about having all of the things all the time. It's not about having all the free time all the time, or doing what you want all the time, but rather it's being able, right? Like, I feel like that's what we're all actually striving for. And to need or assume that it's supposed to be more than that, I think is where so many of us get caught up and lost, and actually can create something that feels more um, debilitating or disappointing. Right? I think that's something else that's just coming to me in real time. Like, how often, and I know I would be curious to know what experiences you've had with this personally, or in supporting others, but how often someone's greatest success actually became one of the biggest disappointments,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Because you thought it was going to be something that maybe it wasn't. And then you're kind of left with, I mean, I just worked my ass off to get here and it wasn't the thing. So fuck, now what?
Yeah.
But I'd be curious, like, what your thoughts are, what experiences you've had with that.
Yeah. That, you know what? It's funny you bring that up. I actually see it both ways, right? Like a lot of times someone's success is their biggest disappointment. And then also vice versa. A lot of times someone's biggest disappointment is actually the linchpin and the platform for their biggest success, right? So it's the duality is there, or the polarity, I should say.
Yeah.
So I see it both sides to answer that question. But to go even deeper, I mean, I can relate to it personally, man. I would say 2021, I think it was, when you were very much involved in what we were building as well at New Age Coach back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That 100% was a false summit for me as well. We got to a certain revenue point, which was great. Fuck, man, we had like, it fluctuated throughout the time we were building the company, but at its height, I think we had like 11 team members at
Mm-hmm.
once that I was managing, which was in hindsight way more than the revenue we were actually making could could handle, which was hilarious. It's
A
just
lesson hard learned.
a lesson I learned, but yeah, man, that 100% was a false summit for me, because I got to the goal number that I was striving to, but my expenses were super inflated. I was working crazy hours. It was around that time. I don't know if you remember this, but it was around that time where my appendix burst, and
Yeah.
I was out for a couple of weeks, and I was super stressed out. And that's like, man, if your blood goes septic, that's actually a pretty major
Yeah.
surgery that you need to get, which I got. So it was a pretty big holy shit moment for me to kind of reevaluate some things, and not to go too deep into this, because it's not just my story to tell, but at the time, Morgan and I, my partner, we were going through, yeah, just some rocky moments, because I was so focused on growing this company, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really in a space energetically where I could give to Morgan, my partner, in the way that she needed to be given to in a new budding relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we were together for a year and a half or so, so not that long.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I started to understand that these false summits that you speak of, Matt, they have such a ripple effect, right? Like such a holistic effect, either negatively or positively in certain areas of your life. And I think that's why naming your podcast more than a business and just the work that you do and the work I'm starting to get into more is so important, because you need to understand the ramifications of the decisions that you make. And just piggybacking off the answer that I told you about what I went through in 2023 and what I'm focused on in 2024. Now my decisions affect my daughter, affect my future family. We plan on having more kids, and there's a lot more responsibility there too, right?
Well, with a mustache like that, you're going to have more kids.
It's
irresistible, my friend.
I'm very potent with but yeah, brother, it's key. And something, this is the name of my podcast, and I'd love to have you on as well. And I named it, I named it similarly in the way you named yours, just with my own version of it. And it's called Create from Truth. Like that's the name of the podcast. And the reason why I named it that is because that's very much like whenever I'm faced with a hard decision, or I need to really think about things, or there's different decisions that have a lot of upside, and I'm forced to pick one. I always come back to that, right? Like what is the truth of this moment, right? And what is true for me at this time? Because circumstances always change. But what I've known to be true is that when I ask myself that question and I can act in alignment with it, I will never regret the decision that I make, and it will never be a mistake in hindsight. So for me moving forward, and just answering the question of false summits that I've seen for myself and other clients, if you're creating from that place, even if you grow something or you get to some goal and it wasn't necessarily what you thought it would be, if it was created from a place of truth and integrity and alignment for you, I guarantee you it's just the platform for whatever your next thing is going to be. And it's a good thing at the end of the day. Or on the flip side, you could be to where I was in 2021, growing this huge company and doing it kind of out of alignment and kind of looking at what my competitors were doing and trying to keep up with them, right? And then my appendix burst and like other things in my life, like my health, my relationship were not where I wanted it to be because of some of the decisions I made in massively scaling this company. That wasn't my truth. And I had to pay consequences for that and kind of pick up the pieces a few years after for that and get to where I'm at now, right? But that took a lot of time. So when you're growing something, you're really working towards something. I think for me anyway, asking myself that question and knowing what that is and acting in alignment with your core values can never really steer you wrong, but you have to have the space and be quiet to be able to understand what those answers are, right? And ask yourself those questions. So a couple of things that helped me and some clients as well.
I would love to hear not just the moments, but trying to find a great way to ask this, because it can be very confusing, I think, for many. It certainly, has been at times for me, where you're hearing someone that has arrived in a place that sounds like where you ultimately want to go. Maybe they finally put into words what you've been trying to articulate to yourself, let alone to other, right? And first, that could be the biggest point, right? When you can just hear someone else say it in the way that you've been trying to, hear it or figure it out on your own for so long. You're like, holy shit, that does exist. But for you personally, being someone who, you were growing the company, you had the things, you were doing well. And I remember, when we met, like you've always been of integrity, right? Like there was never a moment that I recall feeling or knowing that what you were saying wasn't coming from truth, whether that truth has evolved. I won't say changed, but evolved, right? It's matured. It was always of integrity in every moment that I ever experienced, with you. So I'd love to know, like, when you're thinking about this in hindsight, and this is for me as much as anyone else that will ever hear this, how would you describe, like, what is it that you needed to get to this point where it began to shift from, I keep getting this vision of a tree, right? So it goes from like, all the leaves that everyone can see being the most important thing to what I hear you describing now feels more like the strength of the roots, right? Like for you, if that metaphor makes sense, what would you say were the moments that really began to shift that perspective or that motivation for you?
Mm.
Like for someone that I guess what I'm trying to say is for someone that hasn't gotten there yet and they're still trying to like figure it out and they think that they need to go here to get there,
Yeah.
right? What would you say that turning point was for you personally?
Oh man, that's a really good question. It's hard for me to give like an exact ABC type
Of
answer
course.
because I couldn't answer those questions you just asked me over the last 10 or so minutes without going through what I went through, right? Like you can't,
Mm-hmm.
like to answer your question, you can't just get there without going through that journey and some of that suck and some of the highs and the lows of what that looks like for you in order to have that perspective and have the discernment to be able to make
Mm.
decisions in alignment with what your truth is, right? So I think the way I would answer that question would be piggybacking off one of my last answers is understand what is the truth in the moment for you right now that you're
Mm-hmm.
looking to build upon, you're looking to grow, you're looking to aspire to be, and act in alignment with that and be. And there's seasons in life, right? Like for example, I'm in a very different season in life right now with my growth, with the capacity that I just have in order to
Right.
put into things I want to achieve in my life. But if you're at a point where you have a lot of capacity and you can put a lot into what you're looking to achieve, if that's your season, by all means, like dabble in a lot of different areas. Read all the books you can. Listen to all the podcasts. Don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of fluff out there, and you should listen to certain things that
Mm-hmm.
are going to get you there quicker. But the more you can put in the reps, just like a pro athlete, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're on the come up, you're practicing whatever skills it is that you need to be a professional at what you do. So if you're in that stage, my advice would be go all in. Make sure it doesn't massively negatively affect different areas of your life. But whatever that version is for you to go all in, do it, and then be okay with failing. Be
Mm-hmm.
okay with reevaluating your path,
Mm-hmm.
reevaluating your vision, reevaluating what's important to you, because it's within that pursuit that you're going to learn those things. I don't think that you can just learn those things. You don't just have it innately. You have a direction, which is
Mm-hmm.
important, and I think you should follow that as well as you can. But it's in the journey along the way where you're going to pick up the lessons that's going to give you the discernment to get to where you want to go over time. Time is the variable, and it's taking those action steps to be able to have that perspective to kind of get to a point where if you're looking at me and you're saying, how can I get to where Will is? You can't just get there. You have to go through that journey of whatever that is for you. Follow it to the truest ability of
Mm-hmm.
your heart and your mind. And the only variable is time, and you will get there. But you just need to listen to the
Mm-hmm.
signs, to your heart, to your mind of what it's telling you in that journey, in that pursuit. And you'll eventually get to where you want to go. And that's by far the best advice I can give someone who's in that stage, for sure.
It reminds me of a quote from Tom Bilyeu. He said, I think I'm going to get this right. He said something to the effect of, if you, um, basically he was describing if you're someone who looks up to him. He's like, he's like, stop. He's like, if you want what I have, he's like, stop chasing what I have and start chasing what I've learned.
Yeah.
Right. That wasn't the exact one, but that's to the best of my recollection. It was basically just if you want what I have, stop going after the things and start going after what I've learned,
100%.
which I thought
100%.
was really powerful when I came across that a while back. And it's so interesting. Like I was writing this morning and I wrote without pulling it and reading it all. Basically what I realized recently that if you're someone who is, committed to transforming yourself, if you're committed to becoming better, if you're committed to whatever that transformation is that you desire in your life, I don't care if it's business, health, relationship, whatever. When I look back, as I was thinking about my 2023 and the years prior, the points that have completely transformed my life, not just by circumstance, but into something that I'm proud of, right? Have the one variable in every single one of them was there was a point of no return. I had made a decision that that's what I was going to see through, be it my relationship with Allison. We're now 8 years in, and building our lives together, being it my business. Those are the two big things. And even in some of the moments or some of the seasons that were the most difficult, like I found that it's the point of no return that actually does the heavy lifting for you in so many ways, right? And that hit me because I've recently gotten into trail running, and as like
Oh yeah.
my hobby, I guess hobby, but like I really find a lot of value in it, and I've completed my first uh, organized event, and I just set up for a half marathon coming up. And the thing that I find I love about running on the trails more than anything else is, unlike a gym, unlike a treadmill, unlike anything else, like there's like there's no, I mean, the only way to finish it is to finish it, right? You can't just get off the trail and be done. Like, when you get out there and you're in mile 6, 7, like you're there. So if you're going to, finish that race, it's because you have to go and finish the race. And I find that, what we all need to transform our lives is to identify what's that thing we're unwilling to fail at. Right. And when I say fail, I don't mean some metric that must be achieved. I mean, we're going to see it through and become the version of ourselves that we can trust holding that responsibility. Right. And I was thinking about this before we jumped on here, just knowing that, you have an experience in your life right now that I don't yet, but I'm extremely interested to hear more about, which is fatherhood. Right. And how that has impacted your relationship with Morgan, your relationship to your business, your definition of success, and all these kind of things. And I would just love to know a little more, because that's, I think, the epitome of the point of no return. Like, right, you can't just check out of being a father. Like, now you are that, and you have to become the man or woman, who can carry that responsibility in the way in which this is my idea, that you can carry that responsibility in a way that makes you proud, right? And I would love to know just what that shift has been like for you over the past, year and a half. I'll leave it at that. I have 13 more questions that just came into my mind, so I'll just toss it and see where you take us.
Yeah, man. I mean, oh, brother, I can go a lot of different ways with this answer, but I'll just start with riffing on what's true to me and kind of where my heart's at right now. One of the biggest things that I've always thought, even before becoming a father, was I wanted to be a present dad who can help, if it's a son, if it's a daughter, whatever kids I would have, help them understand who they are and live a life in alignment with that and create the space for that, right? And that was something that I think I had to an extent as a kid, but the freedom and the full expression of that, I don't think I really had as a kid. And that's something that I always kind of made a promise to myself to be able to provide to my kids in a way. And that's something Morgan and I have talked extensively about, and is one of the main priorities in parenting. We have many, many more, and I won't bore you with that, but that's one thing that we were actually just talking about the other day. So it's top of mind for me. And we have a daughter, and we're going to have more kids as well. And one of the main kind of point of no return moments for me, obviously after Morgan got pregnant, we figured out we were going to have a baby girl, was understanding, okay, I'm running this business and it's built in a certain way. And here's how my life is set up in order to run this business, because you can't, and I'll kind of go a little bit on a tangent here if you'll.
Yeah, please.
But you can't separate the human from the business. Like you need to understand that the performance that you're inputting into your business in order to get to a certain point, like those things are connected, right? They are
Mhm.
very, very much connected. So for me, one of the biggest linchpin moments for me in terms of making decisions and restructuring things so that I can achieve my definition of success as a father and just
Mhm.
building a family was understanding how can I make sure that I give to myself energetically and in a space where I'm able to shut off from work after I'm done my day, go
Mhm.
upstairs because my office right now is in the basement. Go
Mhm.
upstairs and be able to create a good connected space for my family, especially as the masculine. Like that's one of your
Yeah.
roles, right? Especially with me having a daughter.
Mhm.
And what I understood was in the way I was running my business before, there were certain aspects of it that were very draining for me energetically.
Mm.
And I would go upstairs to my family drained and I wouldn't be my best self. And there would be different things and different elements that I saw showing up just for me in terms of how I was being.
Mhm.
That wasn't necessarily what I wanted or in alignment. And it wasn't achieving, not that this is not that we have goals for our family that we're always striving towards, but I wasn't achieving the feeling, right, that I
Mm.
wanted to do in my family life. So for me, it was just rethinking that and resetting goals to understand holistically, like what are the
Mhm.
impacts of my being and how can I set up my business? How can I set up my fitness? How can I set up my spirituality practice? How can I set up these different areas in my life? My connection with Morgan, my connection with nature. I love getting outside. I love paddleboarding, trail running, everything you just said. And
Yeah.
how can I set up all these different things holistically so that I'm able to create the space for the most important thing in my life, which is my family, right?
Yeah.
And it's understanding how connected and how intertwined these things are, which to be honest, Matt, I never really like I understood, but I never
Mhm.
really understood in practice for myself
Mhm.
in the way that I do now, in the way of becoming a father and the leader of my family now.
Mhm.
So for me, that was one of the biggest things that in linchpin moments in terms of okay, there's to use your words, there's no point of like no return now. Like I can't go back and undo
Yeah.
creating a
Yeah.
product. Like, and not that I want to. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. So making sure that I'm able to set up the different things in my life to create the space and create the vision and more so the feelings and memories that I want to with my family is one of the most important things. So yeah, and just to kind of cap that answer as well. What's also important for me to bring up, just on one thing that you said there, in
Mhm.
terms of comparing yourself to different people's chapters in life, the social media is a double-edged sword. Like it's such a beautiful thing to learn and to
Mhm.
create skills and to get inspired and to yeah just help motivate, get you to where you want to go and see what's possible. But it's the double-edged sword in the sense that if you're comparing your current version
Mhm.
to let's say like a billionaire like that's
Right.
just so the gap like you're not seeing everything they went through all the little decisions in order to get
Mhm.
to where they're at now and you're comparing your morning routine to theirs, right? Because that's
Mm.
just what's like front and center with social media. So even with me, right, like with the answers I'm giving, just know that like you need to focus on your next few steps, right? Like
Mhm.
definitely have the vision in mind and that true north star, whatever that is for you. But also just focus on your next few steps and don't it's so cliche, but like don't compare your chapter one to someone else's chapter 22.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is because and I still do, man. I need to catch myself. Like I still fall
Mhm.
into that trap, and it's just the way the online world is designed, and we all work online nowadays. So just understanding that, I think, is something that's important. But anyway, two answers in one for you.
No, I love this because you touched on probably the most important thing, as far as like why I am launching more than a business. In the promise that I'm making, it's because I literally have it written right here. It says, "More than a business is about changing the narrative of someone's life. It's
Mm-hmm.
about giving your life a deeper meaning, a cause, a reason, a mission. It's about believing in yourself." And when I'm here, when you were talking about the comparing to others, right, that might be further along in their journey than we feel we are, I think the other thing that really sticks out to me too is, most of us, it's not about a how, right? People aren't confused by like how to do things more than they think. What they're really missing is the why. What is their mission? What is their cause? What is their reason for doing it? Is the thing that I think most of us lack clarity around. It certainly has been for me. Um, and when people are like, I don't know what to do next, or I don't know how to do something, or they just feel very stuck, I find that they're often hyper focused on someone else's narrative, and they're trying to figure out how to live their story versus doing that work, that reflection, and saying, okay, what is the story that I want to be living? Because the deeper I've gotten into the story I want to live, the more clarity I have found in how I want to do it. Who are the people in my life that support that, and I'm fulfilled by, the type of money that requires and feels good. And like you said earlier, understanding your core values so you can begin to make, especially the tough decisions, right? Because on the surface, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There's going to be a lot of, one thing looks like it'll be a quicker win than the next. Like, what do you do? And you might be in a tough spot, when that decision is, or when you're confronted with that decision. And unless you know what your core values are, and I don't mean the shit that you would just post on the wall that sound nice, or the things that you put, on your Instagram reels every now and again. Like, I'm talking about like when you're really, feet to the fire, like what decision leaves you feeling proud of yourself? What decision really feels like it's of integrity? Um, and uh, and I just think that's the most important thing, and that's what I found in wanting to work with people like yourself, who have made the decision at some point that creating a business, but more specifically one that has a purpose, a mission to be of service to others. Um, those are the people that I want to work with most. Right. And the reason why, I've made this promise, because I'm not one, I actually still am working through this a little bit. But I hate the idea of promising money. I hate the idea of using money as a metric to validate one's, abilities, or uh, qualifications or whatever. But the reason why I chose that 0 to 100K mark, if you or anyone is listening, hears or sees my content, my website, has nothing to do with the money at all. I don't give a fuck about 100K in the sense of $100,000. But what I have found, and I learned a lot of this too, in working with you in New Age and supporting, all the people that were coming through there is an effort that is required. There's a clarity that is required to go from that zero to gaining traction to building something that earns, 100K or more or whatever, especially being able to do it consistently. That's the part of the journey I fucking love the most, because it's, yes, strategy is important, but clarity is everything. Right. And so many people I find are out there hunting for strategy when what they're ultimately needing is clarity. And I don't mean a clear strategy. I mean, what's the narrative in your life? What's the story that you want to be living that inspires you? And I find that it's so much simpler. The one that really gets people moving, the story's so much simpler than they ever thought possible. It has nothing to do with the how impressive, it has everything to do with the roots, right? Not the leaves. And um so sorry, I'm going on my own tangent here, but this is what happens when we hang out. Um but yeah, that's the thing that I just value so much, is it's the clarity in oneself and what really matters. And then you get to build a business that supports that narrative, versus building a business that you hope is successful or becomes successful in hopes that that feels like the narrative you want to be living.
Bro, I could riff on this with you all day. It's so important. When I look at some of the most successful clients I've ever worked with, they have three things in common, three C words: clarity, which is what you just said, confidence, and certainty in themselves first. Like minus who their ideal type of client is, like what their strategy is, what their offer is, how much they're charging. Like all that stuff is nuanced and it's just semantics, right? Who the fuck are you? And do you have that foundation? Like your podcast name, beautiful, like More Than Business. Do you have that foundation that you can put the strategy and everything else on top of? Because if you don't, and I've worked with clients who don't, like you supported something of a new age, for example, like everything just crumbles. I don't care if you have the best strategy in the world. It's not going to work unless you have that strong foundation. And I'd argue that foundation, and we could just wrap on this for a little bit, is created from going through like experiences, right? Like in my opinion, that's what gives you discernment, like to be able to make decisions of different forks in the road that you can come to is drawing off of past experiences and understanding what your core values are. And one of the most important things, like, and this is something I'm super committed to in 2024, which is probably the opposite advice that a lot of other business coaches are talking about. But
I don't know what you're going to say, but good.
But like, dude, spending less and less and less time on tech, like not just social media, but like tech in general, like even Zoom calls, like just supporting clients, like trying to get off, like not totally, because that's my business and my livelihood, is how I make money for my family, but spending more time in nature, going on hikes, paddling, because when it comes to understanding what your core values are and how you can better guide yourself to make important decisions in your life, if you don't get quiet and you don't A, create those core values, and then B, always put those core values to the test, because sometimes you reevaluate them as you grow, right? As things change, everybody's lives change. If you're not doing that, then I'd argue your life you're just kind of like a plastic bag in the wind. And like depending on who gets voted president or depending on what's happening with the economy, like very, very much
it'll hijack you.
Yeah, man, the quality of your life. Whereas on the flip
because
side,
there's no roots. Are you a coach who has been struggling to do everything yourself? I mean, all of the content, the emails, the marketing, not to mention every time you open your phone, there's a new social media strategy that someone is pitching that just makes you feel like you'll never be able to keep up. When all you really care about is helping people in a meaningful way while building the kind of coaching business your family can depend on. I'm Matthew Paetz, the founder of Momentum, a growth agency that specializes in helping coaches just like you break through your first 100K. If you're a coach who is tired of trying to figure it all out themselves and you just want to build a business that works, then I'm going to encourage you to click the link in our show notes to take your 100K coaching assessment to find out if you're ready to unlock your six-figure potential today.
Dude, exactly.
It's just leaves.
Exactly, bro. It's a great way to say it. It's a great analogy. So yeah, man, those are very, very important things to understand. So anyway, I'll throw it over to you to wrap on that. But yeah, that's something that just came up for me.
No, I absolutely love it. And something else too, I have a book that I'm going to recommend if you haven't read it already. Are you familiar with Donald Miller?
Yes.
Okay.
Love his books. Yeah.
He's been his work has been a huge influence on my past year, like huge. I've read 3 or 4 of his books this year. Like it's insane. And now I'm rereading them because they were that important. But the one that really, like, I don't know if you've ever come across a book where you're like, fuck, this is the book I wish I could have written, right? Like if I were going to say this was my kind of book, this, represents exactly what I feel about what I would hope to create. But it's titled Hero on a Mission.
Ooh, I haven't read that one actually. Is that new?
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I believe it is his most recent.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Hero on a Mission. I mean, I know for a fact you're gonna just highlight the shit out of all of it. So that'll be a fun one for us to riff on, because I think it speaks directly to what we're talking about here, and that's also why I love going back to the point of no return, going back to the roots. Why anyone who has decided that they want to create their own business, right? Why I love working with, again, specifically a business that is rooted in service, right? You want to be of service. One, because I believe that, purpose stems from our pain or our struggles, right? Much like we're describing right now. And if you've been through enough, you realize how the value right? And the importance of passing that information on or holding space for those that are navigating similar storms, if you will. But the reason why I love working with entrepreneurs with a mission is because your business becomes that thing that it's the bone and the dog with the bone analogy, right? And the thing that I love about business is I truly believe this. I believe your business is single-handedly the greatest vehicle to transform your life, period. I think it's the greatest vehicle. And I understand, marriage and children and these things will do a lot of transforming as well. But the reason why I say I believe that business is the greatest vehicle is because, like you were saying earlier, the person is the business, right? Your business will never outperform the person running it. It can't, right? Your business is completely dependent on you, the one who is leading it, right? Where unlike a spouse or unlike a child or unlike anything else, that you can essentially, project your stuff onto them, right? Your business doesn't give a fuck what your early childhood struggles are. Your business doesn't give a damn what the market does. Your business doesn't give a shit who's president. Like, it can only go as far as you can take it, right? So I find that it's the greatest reflection to oneself, one's struggles, one's abilities. And it's always, and here's another thing, there's always a way to move forward, right? It's never a hard stop. So whatever the struggle is, whatever the disappointment, whatever the money loss, whatever the market change, your business can survive all of it. If you're curious, open-minded, resilient, committed, you'll figure it out. And the other reason why I think business is so important is, one, it only grows if it truly adds value to someone else. No one invests in your business if it's about you, right? That's not how your business is going to grow if it's about you. But if you make your business your mission, i.e., to be of service to others, your business will find traction eventually, somewhere, somehow, if you keep showing up to that. And the other reason why I say that business is so important is because it's also the only thing in our lives that are of that list of importance that actually provides financial means, right? So much of our life is dependent on resource and resources. And being in business, you have the ability to create the resources that you find necessary to live the life that you and your family ultimately desire, right? And that's the other part that I love, is it's a vehicle that is truly capable of transforming one's narrative, because first, it's you versus you every day. And then the more truth you find, the more clear you become on who you are and the life you want to create. Your business will reflect that. And if it's, as long as it's of service to others and truly adds value, it will begin to provide a financial return that, again, has the ability to transform the narrative of you and your family's life. And that's why I find business to be so important, is that it's all about the transformation of self and changing the narrative, right? If you grew up poor, your business can change that, right? If you grew up feeling like you're not smart enough, the process of running your business can change that, right? If there's some imposter syndrome of any kind or shame, your business will bring you in direct contact with that part and provide an opportunity to transform that. And I think if you're willing to continue to do the work and continue to pare down, not get bigger, pare it down, get simpler, get more stable, get more solid, the conviction that you're referring to, that's when people really find the traction and the success that I think their soul desires, not the kind their mind thinks they're supposed to have. Right. um, so anyway, that's tangent number 7.
No, bro, that's excellent. And dude, I'll also say this, like, what a big, let's say, principle that
Mhm.
I've guided and built my businesses on and just decision making processes on is the law of cause and effect, like, quite simply. And money is always an effect. Money is never the cause. Money is always the effect. So the cause is exactly what you just spoke about for the last 5-6 minutes there. And it's doing all of those little things and the deep work to be able to get you to a point where you can reach whatever financial goal, you can change the narrative of your family, you can overcome imposter syndrome or different limiting beliefs that have been nagging at you for years and years and years, heal childhood trauma or different things that have come up for you. Like, it's such a holistic business, if you see it in this way, it's such a holistic net positive and benefit on your life. I mean, it could be the flip as well. I've had versions of that. But if you see it in this way, it can be such a net positive in not only your life, but your family's life, your clients' lives. And it's just such this beautiful ripple effect that takes place in the entrepreneur's life that I think is just amazing. But you're so right, Matt. It's being able to get yourself to a point where you can evolve yourself to realize whatever vision it is that you have with your company. And even for me, like, I'm at a point now where, and this isn't me trying to toot my own horn, but
come with it, be unapologetic. But no, seriously, because that's not to interject too much, but that's what I want from these conversations. Right. Because it's even you and I can come here and we can play that scripted kind of tone a little bit. Like we kind of know someone's going to be listening. So we curate our responses in some ways. But what I'm most excited about in having these conversations are these moments of just unapologetic, like, this is what it is for you and whatever the topic is, may be, because I think too often people, they don't get that part. Right. That's the part they feel lost and they're uncertain because no one is shined a light or articulated that part that they're so desperately trying to identify. Instead, it's, we can talk on all these things and it's important, but it's these unapologetic moments that I care most about. So toot your horn loudly, whatever you're about to say, fucking go there.
But yeah, so for me, my coaching is sold out. Like, you might be listening to this podcast and you might be thinking, "Oh, Will seems like a great coach. I want to see what his services are." You can't.
And I would validate that, by the way. If they think that, I will tell them it's true.
I appreciate that, but I have no spots for you. Apologies. But that's a good problem to have. And I'll say this, and this is my point.
Yeah, no spots yet. Assuming one day there might be one.
is no matter like what I've done in my life, and I'll connect this back to coaching, but if it's volunteer firefighting, if it's sports, if it's whatever it was, and now even to coaching, every client has told me the same thing, is they've never hired me because of my strategy or because of like a certain thing in my marketing or whatever it may be. It was always who I was. And that's not just true in coaching. That's true in, like I said, sports, firefighting, relations, like anything in life. I've always heard the same thing growing up. So, but the reason why I bring this up is because, to your point, Matt, like thinking about the cause and effect of your business, where I'm at now in business, being pretty much sold out for the next year, that's come from like 10 years of just doing some deep, intimate work on myself, going through shit, seeing highs and lows, making a ton of money, losing it all, burning my whole team down, having to fire people, hire people, everything, crying, like everything, man. Like a fucking mess. Like just an absolute hurricane. To get to the point where I'm at now. And the common thread, and this is my take home point, the common thread is not a strategy that was born from it or whatever it may be. It's the development of yourself. And at the end of the day, like I said, a new president can get voted, COVID can happen again, like the economy can take a complete downturn. But if you have skills and if you're clear and confident and certain in yourself and you have a certain set of core values that guide your life to get you to wherever you want to go, no one can take that away from you. Absolutely no one. So investing in those things, don't get me wrong, strategy and everything else is great, but investing in those things and arguably time, not necessarily just money, but like investing time, creating white space to think about these things for the development of yourself, in my opinion, that's the common thread of everything in your life. Like you're asking me parenting questions and relationship with Morgan and my business, like all of these things are connected to like, who is Will? And like, it's the same thing with you, Matt. It's the same thing with whoever's listening to this podcast. So keeping that true, and that's why I think the name of your podcast is absolutely beautiful, More Than Business. Keeping that true to how you make decisions, I think is one of the most important things that you can do in the development of yourself and the development of your business as well.
I love that. And, something that keeps coming to mind right now is, well, it's a couple things. So one, this idea that, so many people are, especially when we go online, right? And it's natural. What I'm about to say, it's absolutely natural. But, when we first put ourselves out there, even if it's not intentional, the emphasis is on how do we appear to others, right? We're so hyper focused on how I look to whomever. And, that's what I find is, that's what kills more. It kills more things than anything else on the planet, is quite literally our fear of someone else's opinion. It certainly has been my biggest struggle. And when I think about this idea of like, you brought up tech earlier, and that immediately made me think of AI and all the conversations that are kind of bouncing around the fears of what it does and all this stuff. And, if there's anything that I believe, AI aside, but just, us being so interconnected, I think the thing that becomes the most valuable human thing above all tech that I believe will ever exist is that, well, two. One, it's soul, period. Right. And we know and someone that's like, what do you mean by soul? Watch, this idea of like artificial, like there's commercials out right now that's clearly artificial intelligence, right? Their character, like a Charles Barkley commercial, I know there's one with him next to his younger self, right? And the younger self is clearly AI. And the thing that AI, I don't believe will ever, or any type of tech will ever be able to duplicate or replicate, is the soul, right? The human recognizes human, no matter how impressive the aesthetic. And I think the thing that is most human is this ability to trust. And I think that's probably what so many people are yearning for now is, can I trust what I'm saying? Can I trust what I'm hearing? And that brings me to this idea of like our desire to be impressive. And some people, they feel like to be impressive, they must appear perfect, whatever that means, right? They must not show blemish, right? So even though they know they're not perfect, they can't present that side of themselves. They have to present the side that hasn't been scratched, is what they're attempting to do. And when I think about this, you use your experience of being a volunteer firefighter. That's obviously a very that job requires a lot of trust, right? In the men and women that are around you, and in yourself going into those circumstances. And I'd be curious, as someone that's lived this firsthand, when it comes to just trust. Let's say you were being called out to go fight to some crazy ass fire, whatever it looked like, and two people walk through the door, right? That were one of which you have to follow, right? You only get these two options. One comes through the door and their uniform is brand new, squeaky clean, right? Like they are unblemished. And then the next person comes through the door and they've been through it, right? You can tell they've been through a fire or two, right? And they both are talking to you about what the plan is going to be. Inherently, which one do you trust more?
Well, it would always be the experienced one, always.
Right? And I know that feels kind of like an obvious one in this scenario, but like, what is it about the person that comes through with the tattered, uniform and the gear all messed up and the smoke all over his face, or the ash, whatever it is? Like, what is it about that person? They've clearly gotten their ass whooped. Why would you follow that person over the one that appears to never like been scratched?
Yeah. Experience, and they know the next step because they've been through it, right? They know they know like 3 steps ahead of you, which is exactly what you would want in a situation like that.
I love it because I've used this analogy in various ways with different people depending on their history, and it's always been true. The person it's this weird thing that we think we must look perfect, but yet we don't even trust perfection. Right? Like that person that's on Instagram with all the perfect, curated all these things. We don't trust it, even if we're like intrigued by it, or, for whatever reason we're attracted to it. We don't trust it. And I think, go ahead, please.
No, I agree. Trust is the. I talk about this with my clients all the time. Trust is the currency. That like mic drop, like that is it. Like especially when it comes to building your online coaching business or whatever your goal is, it's exchanging trust, right? It's not getting clients making money. It's how can I get my ideal type of client to trust me so that they see me as the type of coach that they would potentially want to work with to achieve whatever goal it is that they have, like whatever your offer is. Like that's the game. That's it. And you're right. Like us as humans, that's what we are looking for. If we're going to make if it's a buying decision or a life and death decision in firefighting, like you brought up, what guides our decision is trust, 1,000%. So if that's true, which it is, what are the requirements of trust? And especially when it comes to like marketing, for example, like that's what you want to ask yourself is what are those elements for your ideal type of client, and then how can you make sure that you connect that with your truth, with your story, with whatever your offer is, and you're able to show that in a way that's authentic and that's true to you, versus trying to, which is exactly what you're saying, Matt, trying to be something you're not, or thinking about what other people are thinking about you, and then trying to portray a certain image or voice or character based off of that is untruthful to you, which then in turn declines trust with your market, your audience, 1,000%, man.
Yeah.
So
you can't
so
sell
funny.
trust.
You actually do like when you're trying to put on an image or like try to pretend, you're actually doing the opposite of what you're intending to do, right? Like you're trying to fit in, you're trying to attract a certain type of person, but you're doing the complete opposite. So to your point, man, like sharing some of the struggles, sharing some of the things you've been through, sharing some of the shit storms that you've been through, like that's what's going to connect with your audience. That's what's going to attract your ideal types of clients, and being able to holistically, I use that word a lot, but it's top of mind for me right now, connect that to your story, to different areas in your life, and just really make sure that's true for you. Like, man, that's the game. That's what we're all trying to achieve, and it's just different levels of that. And like, I'm very, very much in that journey myself. Like, I've gone through different levels of mastery, let's say, of that as well. And in 2024, I have very specific goals in terms of what I want to communicate online, and it's the definition of my podcast, which is Create from Truth. And like that's it, man. Like that's my thing. And just making sure you go through what that definition is for you, I think is honestly the best thing that you can do in your current situation. 1,000%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it'll never steal your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, man.
And it's tried and true. And any wise person you listen to, they're going to tell you a variation of that exact lesson. Right? So I think it's, and you brought up holistically. I think it's funny because what I keep hearing, you're talking about nature, you're talking about, core values, you're talking about all these things. And like, what I hear you describing is really, kind of what's left after seasons of pruning. Right?
Yes.
Like you really, I mean, as long as I've known you, that's been the journey. And, I don't know if you're familiar with essentialism. You familiar with this philosophy?
Yeah, of course.
And same. And it rings true to me, this idea of less but better. Right. And that's really what I think we're all seeking is it's not more, right? More is impressive. And by the way, if you look at nature, human beings are quite literally the only living anything, species, creature, whatever, that consumes more than it needs.
Yes, that's so true.
Look at any organism that exists on the planet. I don't care how big, how small, whatever. It only consumes as much as it ultimately needs in order to move forward. Right?
Yeah.
Sharks aren't hoarding dead bodies so it can eat later. Right? They only eat when they need to. Right? Like, and the same is true for anything. But human beings are the only thing that consumes more than it needs. And I think what people are missing is that really we're not lacking stuff. We're not lacking ability. We're not lacking anything. I think what most people are lacking without even realizing it is they're lacking a deep sense of meaning. Yeah. Right? And I think the only way that we really feel a deep sense of meaning is when we courageously, right, take responsibility for something bigger than ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we're responsible for every part of it, but we're going to take responsibility and show up and be available and be able, right? Like you take responsibility as a father. It doesn't mean you're going to do everything for, for your daughter for as long as she lives and she's your responsibility and you have to like micromanage every day. No, but you take responsibility for the impact that you have, for the life that you create, for the, for showing up and being dependable, for trust. Right? When you take responsibility to be someone that others can trust and whatever that takes to get there, right? I've got my journey to become that. You've had yours, and whoever's listening is certainly having theirs. But, that idea of like taking responsibility for something bigger than self is what most people are missing.
Yeah. And I'd also say, to riff on that, this is something I know to be true for myself, is taking responsibility for something bigger than self, defining what's true for you, acting in alignment with your core values. You need to keep that top of mind. It's very easy. And this is from one of my answers earlier on in this podcast. I was talking about everything I went through in 2021. Mm-hmm. At that point in my life, I had core values. I had good integrity in a way. But it was very easy for me to get stuck in the day-to-day, the inertia of the day-to-day, what I was, the trends in the market, what my competitors were doing. And it was easy for me to get swayed just because there was a lot happening and there was a lot of fast decisions that needed to be made. There was a lot of different elements happening that was just very, very rapid. And it was hard for me at that time anyway to get quiet and to make sound decisions. So ever since then, and kind of evolving to where I'm at now, something that's been important for me is having a practice or a routine, if you will, where you come back to that vision, something bigger than yourself, those core values, and you remind yourself of those things, because it's easy to say you have core values or you have this mission, but it's also easy to forget about it because life happens, right? And then guess what? 6 months goes by, a year goes by, 5 years goes by, and you're like, what was that again? And like that amount of time has gone by where you haven't acted in alignment with it. And now you're just like what you said, the paper bag in the wind, or the leaves blowing in the wind. And that's your life. Like you don't want that. So for me anyway, yeah, I 1,000% agree with what you said. And just to up the ante on that, write that shit down, put it into a doc, whatever it may be. And as you're sipping your coffee every morning, like look at it, like look every day, man. Like it will be the North Star that kind of guides you. And it's so key.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. Like one of the exercises in Hero on a Mission is he will guide you through writing your eulogy.
Oh, wow.
And then, planning life accordingly from, because he talks about he's, as he's a writer, he's been a screenwriter, a novelist, these kind of things. And he teaches you how to live your life using the same principles as of writing a good story or a movie or whatever it is. It's going to, inspire and keep someone engaged. And what he talks about in that process is you start with the end. How do you want it to end? And then you build the story to get to that point, right? You don't just start writing the story and not know where it's going. And, this idea and that's what so many of us are doing, right? We're not clear on where we ultimately want to arrive, who we want to become, more importantly, and then making our decisions based on that commitment. Instead, we're keeping up with the trends or trying to be impressive or whatever, right? We're focused on being the prettiest leaf instead of the strongest root. And to go with your point, that's literally in my desk right now is my eulogy that I read to myself every single morning. And it is deeply powerful. And I think it's something that if we all accepted the reality too, that we only get one of these things, right? Who do we ultimately want to become in this beautiful adventure that we all have? Because that's a lesson that I heard or I learned this year too. And And I'm not bringing this up to go here, but we lost my mother in the beginning of this year, this past February. And, we had many conversations, there, especially in the final days. And one of the things that she kept saying was just how looking back on her life, she wishes that she lived her life more true to herself than the one that she thought she was supposed to live for everyone else. And, when you're talking to someone that knows their days are coming to a close, that clarity, it's so interesting to also witness the words someone chooses when they know that they could be their last. They're not hour-long riffs. It's so simple and clear. And to witness someone look at their life and realize how much of their life was controlled by something that doesn't even matter. And that was the thing. I was like, wow, okay. Like roots over leaves. Leaves are necessary.
Sure.
Right. But yeah. And so I know that was kind of a thing, but what you're saying is spot on.
Dude, on that point, I'm reading this book now. It's called Regenerative Business: How to Align Your Business with Nature for More Abundance, Fulfillment, and Impact. So it's really good. Check it out. I'll send you the link after this. But there's one point in here where she talks about just a normal forest, like an ecosystem in a forest, right? And every so often, lightning will strike and it'll be a natural fire. And that fire will burn down some of the decaying trees and whatever it may be. And it will help with new growth to come after that, which is healthy for that ecosystem, for that forest, right? And she talks about how in your business, and I completely agree, you need to go through that process every now and then as well, like piggybacking off your point of pruning, like having these controlled natural fires to burn down what is not true for you anymore and to allow new growth for what is true for you. Just to what your mother said in some of her last days, and being able to make those hard decisions and see this and feel this early on in life, I think is A, takes a hell of a lot of courage. It's hard. And B, to just do is, oh man. And honestly, man, that's very much a journey I'm in myself too, and learning and kind of evaluating in different ways myself. And it's powerful, man, just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying there. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah. My mind goes a couple different places here, but like you said, I think it all just comes down to truth. The part of courage, right? I think most people are living their life waiting on circumstance to make, to make them change. Right? Be it the birth of a child, be it the death of a loved one, be it the market, the president, whatever. They're waiting on a circumstance to do it, right? If you look, like, for example, I know health is a big thing for you. A lot of people, if you look at the way that they choose to eat, right? They know, I'm one of them. For a fact it's going to, if you don't make a change, you are setting yourself up for a very difficult future, right? And that's putting it lightly. But everyone talks about like why it's so hard to make the change. Obviously there's, all different reasons, many of them justified, but it's interesting when you watch someone go from I absolutely won't to then they get a diagnosis and immediately they change, right? Why? Because all of a sudden the change became about survival, right? And people they have all the knowledge, but they wait on the circumstance. They wait on the threat to get real before they start making the change, only to then look in hindsight and think to themselves like, fuck, man, like why didn't this? So like being ignorant by choice was not worth it, right?
Yeah, that's a really powerful point. The different versions of that. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton. I know you're familiar with those guys. Like they say similar things. Like it's so easy to just wake up and then you just fall into your habitual patterns, right? Like your biology and the chemicals in your brain. Like you just have, okay, look at my phone, look at Instagram, email, get into your day, right? And it's just like habit. And like I said, the variable is time. year goes by, 5 years goes by, and you've just lived this existence. 10, 20 years go by maybe, and you've just kind of lived this existence of just kind of being a leaf, to use the example.
Yeah.
And you're right, man. Like, it's, if you have the courage and just the foresight to be able to see some of these things and make those hard changes before you get that circumstance or diagnosis, like you're saying, I think is, man, that can be one of the most important decisions of your life.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down. Well, brother, I got one more thing I want to ask. I'm looking at the time and realizing we could do this for a couple more hours. But I'm going to piggyback on something you shared, right? Because you are a popular man, right? Because the work you do is so effective, right? That you now, are working with a full roster this year. I'd be curious, and I'm selfishly asking for myself as well. But if you were to, be it a tool of some kind for those that are in that early stage of their business, or they're struggling to find traction, or, that 0 to 100K phase. I don't care if it's taking them 10 years or 10 months, right? If they're in that and they are committed, they know that they're going to do it, but they're just trying to figure it out for themselves. A man with your experience, what would you say is, in your opinion, the most important tool, something tangible that they could actually put into practice if they so choose to courageously do so?
Oh man, if you're striving to go to 0 to 100K in a year in your business, it's not necessarily a tool, but it's more so a way of thinking. And this kind of goes to most of my answers on this podcast. In my experience, I think one of the biggest detriments to getting to, let's say, 100K is shiny object syndrome, and dabbling in a million different things and mastering none of it. And don't get me wrong, there's merit in learning some of that. And if that's part of your journey, that's great. It's part of my journey. But in my experience, the ones who are able to get to 100K rather quickly, let's say, in their business, are the ones who have the ability and the skill to put the blinders on and to focus on what their offer is, focus on who their ideal type of client is, and provide the absolute best service that they can, and seek mastery in that. Like, instead of thinking, I could do a little bit of a low ticket, a little bit of a high ticket, a little bit of a mid ticket, do this JV thing, do this, do that, and like all these different things where they're just dabbling and mastering really none of it. They just focus on, like, mastery, great book by Robert Greene, by the way, mastering what their zone of genius is and going all in on that. That is how you're going to win. But my only caveat to that is, depending on your stage in your journey, you almost have to go through trying different things to kind of find what that is for you. But my advice is, when you do find that thing, when you do find that offer that hits, that's in alignment with who you are, and it also can be financially stable for you too, it will be a feeling. Like, you'll feel it. Like, it'll be like this, almost like, you can speak to it, Matt, like almost this like soul connection, right? With the business. And once you feel that feeling, and if you guys are listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, you will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. You will know what I'm talking about when you get there. Once you find that, my advice is go all in. Like, if you're dabbling in these different things, arguably cut them and go all in on that thing, because that's, like, not to go too metaphysical here, but arguably that's probably what you were put on earth to do. And you should listen to that feeling and go all in on that. And it's the same with me being sold out right now. Like, the reason why that is, and it's funny you bring this up, Matt, I was, just before this call, just a few hours ago, I was journaling on 5 different goals I had for 2024. And they're all like really good goals, all that I'm very connected to. And my process was to cut 4 of them. And that was hard for me, because they were all great opportunities, and they were all things I wanted to do, like, deeply. I still do. It pains me to cut them, but I had to do that, because I knew I would be spread too thin, and going back to my core values and what I'm looking to achieve in my life, it just wasn't in alignment. But anyway, my point is that I'm focusing on my zone of genius and what, like, why people hire me. Like, I'm going all in on that, all in on that. And it's also this delicate dance between knowing that thing and connecting to your soul and what you think you were put on earth to do, but also listening to the market and getting that feedback, right? On what they like, what is their experience with you? What are the highlights on in their words in working with you? And then starting to connect these two things is some of the best advice I could give you if you're at the 0 to 100K a month mark. So not necessarily a tool per se, but more so a way of thinking and something you can strive towards.
Yeah. So I promised that'd be the last question, so I guess I lied. What's your zone of genius?
Oh man. So for me, for coaching, it's kind of evolved over the last few years. But for me, it's helping someone scale their business in alignment with their core values. 1,000%. It's exactly what I'm doing myself.
It's a mission.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah.
And something hit me too that I'm very grateful for, and I'll wrap it on this, as I sit here, because that's the experience I'm currently in, right? This fresh, like, holy shit, like, it stops you in your tracks when it clicks. Like, there is no, like, did it click? I think it kind of, like, no, you're going to know. But what really clicked for me with the whole 100K mark thing is it goes back to trust, right? You got to trust yourself in order to get there. But the 100K personally, the reason why that's so important for me is that's about the stage where I found that the people you love most can begin to trust your business. Right? Like, you can provide. There's going to be, bills paid at the end of every month. There's going to be food on the table. There's going to be abilities to do things. And it's not that you need 100K to do that, but there's something that happens as you get to that point, that those around you that may have been with you in the trenches from day one, or even had some doubts or whatever, you start to see that everyone start to shift, where it goes from that, oh, is that really a thing? Can you really do that? Like, you've always, you've never been able to do it anywhere else. Like, what makes you think you can do it now, type of thing. You have those people, or you have the ones that are like, I'm going to be, my nose is bleeding with you, because I'm going to ride with you until we figure this thing out together. Be it friend, spouse, family, whomever. But there's that shift. And that's why the 100K for me became such an important milestone that I wanted to promote. Is, again, has nothing to do with the money, but everything to do with the transformation that happens. Right? As you know too, when someone hits that mark for the first time, things change. Belief happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you need that long term, for sure.
Yeah.
There's actually, I think there's only a short amount of time, and when I say short amount of time, probably a couple of years, where you can go, if you have significant others in your life, where you can go without that belief, right? Because life is life. You need to wait for it. You need to get to a certain point eventually. So, and again, totally depending on your situation, I have no idea what's going on in your families, but you don't, and depending on how old you are and where things are at, how your family life is set up, you don't have the longest runway in the world. So, I agree with you, Matt. Like, getting to that point is important, not just for yourself and for your business and for your mission, but also for the people who are also most affected by your decisions, which is your family. So it's important.
Which is why it's so important to get clear, because your runway is not long. I don't care what your circumstance is.
That's a good point, man.
So, well, brother, I fucking love you. I appreciate you.
Love you too, man.
And you weren't wrong when you said earlier that your awareness of why people work with you is because of who you are, because that's immediately what I felt. I remember exactly where I was walking when we were introduced and spoke on the phone for the very first time, when I was so fucking nervous, because I knew there was an opportunity to work together at that time, and it was something that I was very, very grateful for and kind of scared of. And, immediately it was nothing you said, but it was how I felt the whole time. And I am deeply appreciative for your courage, because, again, without you, without you stepping out when you did and creating your own business, I wouldn't have ever had that opportunity. And it was that opportunity and working together and supporting others that has literally laid the bricks for me to be able to do what I'm doing now. So, this is really a full circle moment, one of many for me. And again, thank you.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. It means a lot.
Yeah. So, well, I will let you get back to your ladies.
All right, man.
Send them my love.
Dude, I'm pumped for this podcast, man. I think you're just last thing for me. I think you're stepping into exactly what you should be stepping into in 2024, and I'm pumped for you, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I want to riff more.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again, man.
And more than just the podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and stake my poll in something right now, and that's to get up there and visit you this year.
Yes,
it's actually something else and I've talked about specifically. That's for me this year is to make a very considerable effort to get up and connect in person with the people, and specifically for me, the men that inspire me, and they represent where I'm headed, not just where I've been. And there's a couple on the list, and you're right at the top. So getting up there and visiting and seeing the fam and maybe hiking one of those trails is non-negotiable this year.
Dude, hell, if you make that happen, dude, I will show you a good time up here. Like everything. Like, hikes, like paddle, like whatever. Depending on what season you come in, there's so much we could do. Like
it won't be winter.
Okay, so
I'm in Southern California. I've been here too long. It will not be winter.
Hey, I don't play it, brother. I don't play that. All right, there's a lot we can do this summer, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Good deal. Well, brother, I love you. I appreciate you, and until next time.
All right, man. Appreciate the time, brother. See ya.
Cheers.